G7 said in a statement that the Kremlin attack was abominable and that and other attacks like it constitute a war crime. I know Russia denies indiscriminate attacks on civilians, but would you at least admit a tragic, terrible mistake has happened here?
Well, as it was said by the Ministry of Defense, we are targeting only military infrastructure. And that was the case, because the attack was launched against a factory on the territory of which a large amount of weapons that has come from the United States and Europe was put on. And that was the aim of the attack.
Unfortunately, it might have aimed.
Let me finish. Unfortunately, a detonation happened, and the fire has spread on the nearby shopping mall. But this shopping mall has been empty, and it doesn't work since March of this year, because on its territory also some of the storage weaponry has been stationed.
Well, so Ukraine says there were 1,000 people in the mall that day, and 21 missing, bodies retrieved. That isn't consistent with what you're saying. Yeah. Plus, fragments of missile in the shopping mall itself.
Cathy, if you like, I can show you photos, because no single persons it was in the mall during the safety operation. No cars were parked over there, and only just a few men were in front of it, which shows factory. The photos has been taken from a top and inside, so there was no crowd in it.
But there were casualties, there were deaths, you know that.
Some people probably, those who were in the area at the moment. Yes, it's a tragic event. Unfortunately, collateral damage happens because these things is going on everywhere.
Well, when you look at the thousands of civilians that have died in the war so far, that's more than collateral damage, isn't it? That is a war crime on a grand scale.
We are very much concerned about bombing of Lugansk and Donetsk by Ukraine artillery, and especially now they are using Western weapon, also coming from the United Kingdom. And today it was the first strike by the missile installation that has been delivered from US or UK. So they targeted the simple small town inside Lugansk, but far away from the line of it.
But during that time, 8 civilians died last year. During that time, at the hands of Ukraine in those provinces that you just
about
mentioned.
200 of civilians died since March of this year in Donbass due to deliberate targeting of civilian aims at towns, cities, and villages, and it continues. I'm afraid now with the use of UK and French weapon, and this is association to the crime. In fact, it is a war crime that has been done.
Do you believe the information that is coming from your government?
Absolutely. Because it has been verified by bloggers, and we have many sources that are confirming what is happening over there. And these sources are also situated in the area of Ukraine, because there are many people that are sending this information to our bloggers, and they're delivering it. What I am short of, it is total absence of normal information in your newspapers, in British newspapers, and in the area. And there are less and less of this information, because now the defeat is close. Now, defeat in the southeast is going on, and what is happening in the southeast, this should be in the center of attention now of your newspapers, but there is nothing about it.
Well, I ask whether you believe what you're telling me, because it's what you've been told by your government, because last time we sat here, you said, and I quote, you were 100% sure an invasion wouldn't happen. And then 6 days later, it did. Were you lying to me? Were you lying to the British people? Or were you ignorant of what was really going on?
Yeah. Cathy, of course I did expect this question from you. My answer is, I have said in February what I know, what I used to know. Anything else, and all our people were saying the same thing. So I cannot say anything else. What if I don't know something? So I do not know something.
Right. So you were not told by Moscow what was going on, what was being planned, just 6 days after we sat here.
Oh, well, can you imagine that someone during this type of a military operation will warn everybody around the world, even ambassadors, because it was top secret, of course.
Do you feel a bit stupid though, having said that? Because you didn't know what was really happening.
Oh, no, there are many examples in the history when ambassadors are not aware of what is happening, what is going to happen, and ministers sometimes as well.
So Given that you didn't know what was going on then, how are we to believe that you know what is going on in the shopping mall in Kremenchuk today?
I do not want to repeat arguments and what I have already told you.
But they might just not be telling you the real story.
You just may come back to what I have already said and just see it.
Your president said in February that a key aim of what he called the special military operation was to denazify Ukraine. The prominent Russian lawyer, Dmitry Talentov, asked on social media last night if what he called, and I'm going to quote to you, the horror in Kremenchuk is also part of denazification, or is this fascism? He's now being detained. And so I wonder, are you scared of telling the truth?
I'm not sure about whom are you talking about in the first place, but what is going on?
He's a chairman of the attorney's chamber in Russia's
It is a necessity to change attitude by the government. We are not against Ukrainian people. We are in favor of Ukrainian culture. We like Ukraine and Ukrainian people. But we cannot tolerate the government, which is extremely nationalistic, which is aiming at the Russification of Ukraine total. In 1990, 60% of in Ukraine was speaking Russians or Russian language or were Russian. And at that time, Ukraine could find any path of friendship with everybody and all of that. They decided to be extremely nationalistic and now to get reach of Russians over there. That was the aim. And they have gone through this until 2014, and after that, the whole process has intensified. And they have split people into classes. First class are Ukrainians, Ukraine for Ukrainian, and second class were Russians, Jews, Polish, and all of that. That was the ideology. So this ideology was implemented quite clearly. And it was very much encouraged by the countries in the West. UK especially was in front of that.
But if
because
you like
they would like to split, they would like to drive a week between Russia and Ukraine as deep as possible. And they managed it, I'm afraid, to do that.
Okay, but if you like the Ukrainian people, why are you killing them in their thousands? Is that, is bombing a shopping mall denazification? No. It is in the very beginning of the conflict. I think that last day of February, Ukrainian president has said, "Okay, let's negotiate," and we have stopped the operation totally. But it appeared that he didn't want to negotiate. Later on, we have several rounds of negotiations, but all of them were discouraged and said in the end, so no negotiations, fighting should continue. And right now, what I'm amazed that your prime minister and the others, they said that fighting should go. It will be decided in the battle, the fate of it. Isn't it strange? Do they think about Ukraine itself? Do they think about Ukrainian people? The prolongation of conflict will allow Russia to get more targets on it, and it's a territorial losses for Ukraine. It will be people's losses. Ukraine was the poorest country before the conflict. Do you imagine what's going to happen in the end of the day to Ukraine, where economy doesn't work, people are mainly enlisted in the army? So what will be in the end of this prolonged conflict? Does that worry you, how this ends?
Very much. This worries me, of course, because the president of Ukraine anytime can say that, okay, let's stop it, let's negotiate, but he would like to pursue, to continue the conflict.
No, and you too could say that. What would it take to get Russia to say, let's stop it?
Let's stop it. We suggest negotiations every time.
And then you raise cities to the ground.
We have no response at all from they who do not want to negotiate. And you can read your own, the statement of your leaders, and they are saying war should continue.
But Zelensky has many times offered to meet Putin at the negotiating table.
For what? For what? No.
To try and talk peace.
He can do it anytime, but for this he should at least answer the negotiating paper that has been delivered to him, in which proposals based on his own proposals are carefully listed.
But most Russians don't see what is really going on in Ukraine. They don't see the images of Mariupol razed to the ground. They don't see what's happened in Kremenchuk. You see uncensored images, and I wonder if that troubles you.
Russians are very well aware of what is happening in Ukraine. Believe me, because,
They don't see what you see.
because
though.
we do not prohibit TV stations emission, because like it is here has been done without Russian
Well, no,
television.
there's no
and without
independent
Russian.
media in Russia now.
Oh, come on! We are living in the ages of internet. So
Well,
this
why
is very
is
simple.
Dmitry Talantov, the lawyer I was talking about, being detained for saying what really happened in Crimea?
Katie, I'm not aware of this person. Neither I am sure neither I do not know what he has said. So why are you repeating this question? Probably you have more questions, I think.
Well, no, are you troubled by what you see on your screens of Mariupol, the destruction there, of what you've seen coming out of Crimea?
Destruction of Mariupol happened mainly because artillery strikes by Ukrainians, but be sure that we already started reconstruction of Mariupol. It will be by our own forces and by our own. We have a governmental commission, and Mariupol will be reconstructed within 3 years.
I mean, I wonder, given people don't believe what you're saying, governments around the world don't believe what Russia is saying, are you scared of Putin? Are you saying this out of fear?
Katie, you speak about some governments around the world because so-called West.
Well, the whole of the G7.
The G7, it's just a number of countries, and the so-called West, it is only 20% of the world countries. So it is not. Do not pretend to be the opinion makers in the world. The world is different. So if some part of countries, 20%, about just 1/5, so it decided they are going to push Ukraine into battle, it doesn't mean that the rest of the world do believe you.
Are you scared of Putin?
Are you what?
Are you scared of Putin?
Me? No. Why? Why should I be scared of Putin? I understand what he is doing because situation was extremely difficult and we have had no other choice but to do this.
The other justification that your president used for the invasion, the special military operation, as he put it, was to halt NATO's eastward expansion. And yet now Sweden and Finland are applying to join. The alliance meets today more united than ever, with countries increasing their defense spending. So if that was one of his justifications, which he said it was, it's spectacularly backfired, hasn't it?
We did expect it, that Finland and Sweden for many years will be part of NATO. And we do not feel that any threat is coming from Finland or from Sweden.
But you might have expected it, but you wanted to prevent it.
Katie, let me answer, or we will cut it off. Yes, so as I have said, we do not see any threat from Finland and Sweden. We are perfectly aware that they are training together with NATO, participating in several committees of NATO, so they were becoming closer and closer to NATO. So, but we have our problem with Ukraine, and this is a very serious problem. We do not have a problem with Finland, believe me, either with Sweden.
Yeah, but countries around the world in the NATO alliance are massively increasing their defense spending. Does that worry you, that show of strength?
That's a pity. That's a pity because we have defense benefits when they were cutting off. As I have said, do not exaggerate the situation. We are not trying to fight against NATO, not at all. We have our problem with the government of Ukraine because it is extremely nationalistic. It is building anti-Russian state in the anti-Russian spirit, and it is being supported by NATO. That's a pity.
But the consequence of you picking a fight with Ukraine is that NATO is now boosting the number of troops on high alert more than sevenfold to over 300,000. I mean, that is a consequence exactly the opposite of what you wanted, isn't it?
Some 5 or 7 years ago, NATO has made up first Rapid Reaction Forces Corps. It consisted of 40,000. Now, if they decided to increase it up to 300,000, it was unexpectable, I would say expectable. We did anticipate it, that it could have happened, but forces still will be in their own lands, in their own countries, and just in case of necessity, they will be assembled. But as I said, before 1990, we did have about 500,000 of American troops on European soil. Now then it diminished up to 50,000. So it is coming and going. I know that some British troops has been decided to put on European soil. This is not bother us because we are not in conflict with NATO. It is some observers, some political observers are saying, oh, it is conflict between Russia and NATO. This is not correct.
So you see defense weakness around the world. When Boris Johnson invites the G7 leaders to show Putin their pecs, That doesn't
Pecs what?
pecs, you know, the muscles that Putin likes to show off on horseback when he's stripped his shirt off.
Your prime minister is on the forefront of, how would I say, rigid approach. I understand that he does not want to deal with domestic problems because domestic problems probably is not his domain. But now he would like to push his authority to bring his authority behind international matters.
So you don't see a strong prime minister there?
No, it's a possibility, but as I have said, there is a big danger. He is making vague promises to Ukraine about the future. He said about necessity to defend democracy and so on, but he is not saying what will be the future of Ukraine, how to restore its economic, how to help humanitarily to Ukraine at all. So now it is just one story. Ukraine should continue the battle.
So if you don't see...
I think that it is very cynical, by the way. So it's,
if you're not fearful of NATO's strength, if you're not worried about that, you must be worried about the terrible losses that you, Russia, are sustaining, both in terms of personnel and economic losses too. Do you know how many Russian soldiers have died now?
The losses are much less than Ukrainians because we are using precise strikes and we are using modern technology and we are used how to deal it. So it is not announced, but we have internal calculations. I do not want to say anything about that, but it is about 1/10 of Ukrainian losses at all.
That may be because you're the stronger partner. But,
yes.
But you know, the leak from the Russian MOD in March suggested nearly 10,000 Russian soldiers had died, and that was back in March.
In March, it was 1,000, I guess, 300.
That was the public figure, but the official figure that was leaked from the Defense Ministry in Russia.
Well, I do not comment unofficial leaks by someone.
And when our MOD, the UK MOD, says that Russia's forces are increasingly hollowed out and degraded.
They're perfectly aware what is really happening, but the line of command is, of course, taken from Ukrainian sources.
What do you mean by that?
Because if you will compare what MOD is saying publicly or in the newspapers, is totally in line of what Ukrainian MOD is saying.
But you're not worried about the number of Russian soldiers who are dying? Do you have family, friends who have lost sons there in Ukraine?
Me not. I haven't. In fact, come across of that, but what I can say that we have only contracted people, contracted soldiers over there, so no conscripts, but there are specialists who would like to fight, and they are fighting, they are doing this for money, certainly. If there is a desire to do this, so they can do it.
There are still young men dying in their thousands.
I'm more concerned about Ukrainians who are from the territorial defense and who are not educated and not taught how to apply weapon and all of that, because their losses are incomparable with losses of the Russian troops over there.
Do you worry, though, about, we touched on this earlier, but do you worry about where this all ends? You know, global famine, nuclear war.
Very much, yes. I'm very much worried about where it all ends, but most of all, I'm worried about those appeals to continue the conflict. They are mostly worrying, and sending more and more weapons which are of higher and higher quality, like weapons, anti-missile weapons, like modern rockets weapons. It is increasing the depth of conflict. It is escalation, of course. It is escalation, and it is very bad for Ukraine itself.
But what are the consequences of that?
Those who are sending this weapon, and I didn't notice that during G7 they discussed what's going to happen to Ukraine. We are concerned because this is our closest neighbor.
But is there a threat there that Russia could widen its targets, perhaps to include Western targets?
No, absolutely not. I don't believe it. I don't believe in a conflict, as I have said earlier, about the war between Russia and NATO. It cannot occur, and of course NATO is a defensive organization, as we have been told many times. It has been created for defense, and I hope that it will not happen, provided there will be no provocation like stopping cargo to Kaliningrad. It is inside our countries. Lithuanians, just a small country, it is less than 2 million. Make a decision to stop railway communication between Kaliningrad and Russia. It's a pure provocation. These type of things may cause escalation in Europe.
You've given me this interview exactly 2 weeks after Russia banned me and 28 other UK journalists from entering the country. I wonder why you agreed to do it, given that ban.
Very simple. The answer is very simple. We are doing it as a because first of all, Britain has banned from and sanctioned more than 1,000. It is by now it's about 1,500 people from different fields. You sanctioned not only president and the whole government, but his daughters. Lastly, who was sanctioned? That was fantastic, of course. It was the lady who was dealing with children. She's ombudsman for children. For what? It is so cynical. It is what to do. Of course, we are sanctioning people, and you have sanctioned many of our journalists, our television companies. They cannot be seen right now here in Britain totally. Three TV channels has been sanctioned and banned.
Well, how did you decide who to ban? How did you decide who to ban?
Whom to ban?
Yeah. How did you decide which journalists here to ban from going to Russia?
I think that we have banned those journalists who do not publish the correct information about it, mainly. Those who do not want to visit Donetsk and to see with their own eyes what was happening during 8 years of bombardment by Ukrainian forces of domestic films. And all of that, so we have a selection. We have done, not us, but they have done selection in Moscow. Over there, they have more sources of it.
Do you ban the journalists who broadcast the truth?
Steve Rosenberg is in Moscow. He continues. He's just interviewed Sergei Lavrov. He has done his job and all us. Cathy, I'm sorry that I heard that we have banned you, but we can reconsider it if you like to publish normal information.
You have banned me. I wondered why you'd agreed to do the interview, given you banned me.
Why not? Because, well, I am trying to deliver at least some pieces of truth to your newspapers and television, because I cannot discover it in the newspapers or on BBC or it. You can, of course, have an internet, but really it is hard to discover. That is why I'm trying to provide what is really happening over there.
Ambassador Andrei Kelin, thank you very much.
Thank you, Cathy.